Hello, guys. Today's true crime story is about marriage and how it can degenerate to the point that one of the spouses thinks it's okay to end the life of another spouse. It looks at the life of a loving father and husband by name Jared Bridegan, who was also a Microsoft executive, and how he was ambushed and executed after delivering his twins to their mom, who turns out to be his ex wife and was just returning home to his current wife and his kids. This story is coming from 2022 but has had a recent update as at 3 days ago in 2023, August, where his ex wife has now been arrested. We are going to delve deep into this case to talk about the facts that has been established and the reasons why his ex-wife has now been arrested and what she stands to face if she's found guilty along with the others who were arrested before her. I would also go on to look at other implications of this case, especially on the surviving children. Now, everything started going crazy from the 16th of February 2022. This is just 2 days after Valentine's Day. And loving father, loving husband, loving ex husband, Jared Bridegan, was just returning from his ex wife's apartment. I'm sure you'll be wondering why he was there because he is currently married up until his death. It turns out that he shares kids with his ex wife, twins actually, and they co parent per the divorce agreement they had. So he had just finished spending time with these kids and he had returned them to his ex wife and had just left her place and was on his way back home to his current wife and kids. Aside these twins, he has two other kids with his current wife, and one of them, a 2 year old girl, was with him in the car when this incident would occur. Now, per the facts out there, whilst commuting back, Jared saw that there was a huge tire blocking his way, and it was obvious and apparent to him that the best way for him to be able to continue his trip was to get the tire out of the way. Other than that, he's just stuck in a sitting duck. But he didn't know that this was actually a trap because the moment he stepped out of the vehicle to attempt to get the tire out of the way, somebody who had laid ambushed for him fired upon him and executed him there and then on the spot. Fortunately, his 2 year old daughter, who was in the car with him, was not injured physically, but I'm sure she would be injured emotionally and she'll be traumatized psychologically and in other manners as well because injuries are not only physical, there are other forms of it, but we'll get to that part at the end of the video. So, this was what happened to Jared Bridegan, and based on this, at the tender age of 33 years old, his life had just been cut short. Now, when this occurred, his ex wife, by name Shanna Lee Gardner, who was actually 36 years old, came out to talk about how sad she was about what has happened and how it's affecting her negatively and all. But some way, somehow, some people didn't buy it because they had a very crazy divorce proceeding. So some people didn't really believe that she would have that empathy for her ex husband. So his current wife, up until his death, by name Christine Bridegan, also would later talk about the fact that she doesn't believe his ex-wife is actually grieving. But I think that at the time she says this, it's easy for people to just write her off as the current wife who refuses to be on cool terms with the ex-wife, as happens in most cases where a man has been divorced and has remarried. But as we go down the line, you realize that sometimes our instincts speak to us and sometimes it's right. So investigations ensued, and fast forward, an arrest was made. A man, 62 years old, by name Henry Arthur Tenen was arrested and charged with the murder or the shooting and murder of Jared Bridegan. Now, Henry went on to accept a plea deal where he actually pleaded guilty to second degree murder. As part of this plea deal, he agreed to testify against the other people who were involved. And I think that this is where the whole case blew up because, it could have gone one of several ways. After all, they've caught a shooter. And if this shooter has pleaded guilty, it could have ended with him, depending on what they established, what he pleaded to, and what the evidence was speaking to. Somebody could have ruled it as, oh, okay, maybe it was a robbery gone wrong. Maybe he had a personal vendetta. Maybe it was even a case of mistaken identity where he was targeting somebody else and mistook Jared for that person. This is just some few things that I'm thinking of. But all I'm trying to say is the whole case could have ended with the arrest of Henry Arthur Tenen and him actually pleading guilty. But I believe investigators are doing a great job, especially in these times, where they pursue the cases to the very, very end, such that anybody in the trio of culprits will not be left out. And that is what is playing out here because after Henry Arthur Tenen had been arrested and he agreed to the plea deal that was offered him, he decided that, okay, you guys know there are more people. You are yet to uncover them, but I'll help you find them and help you prosecute them in exchange for a lighter sentence. And by so doing, he signing that plea deal, the sentence he got would be that he would have to face 15 years to life in prison, but then it would not include the death penalty. So he's doing all this, and the golden ticket he has in there is to avoid the death penalty and also to face 15 years to life. Now, I can't speak to this deal, but I think that the bit I can speak to is about the fact that it helps to bring the other culprits also to justice. And it did, because Henry Arthur Tenen then agreed that he was going to help to testify against the other parties in his murder, namely Shanna Gardner and Shanna Gardner's new husband, by name Mario Fernandez Saldana. Now, let's find out more about Shanna Lee Gardner. She's a 36 years old woman who actually got married to Jared Bridegan in 2010 after they had met in 2009. And currently, she's facing a possibility of the death penalty if she ends up being found guilty. She is the last person to be arrested, but I'll come to the details of that. Now, it is unclear the reasons as to how come they divorced, but it's also been rumored that when they were married, Jared at a point was alleging that Shanna Gardner was actually cheating on him with her gym instructor. So let's go to the background of what transpired through to how they broke up, when they broke up, what transpired after the breakup, and what has happened now, and look at what Jared's current wife is talking about and the impact on the survivors. So, Jared Bridegan is a father of 4 kids. He has now been ambushed, and at the tender age of 33 years old, he has lost his life. These 4 kids have now become fatherless. Of these 4 kids, two of them, twins, are shared with his ex-wife, Shanna Lee Gardner, and then the other two are shared with his current wife, Christine Bridegan. One of these other two that he shares with his current wife, Christine, that's a 2-year-old daughter, was with him when his life was taken. All right. Now, it is not clear why these guys decided to end his life, but I'm sure investigations are going to unravel all that. It comes at a point in time where people have put a microscope on the institution of marriage and are wondering if it's even worth it at all. And in as much as some people wouldn't want to even entertain that conversation, I think that it's important we also look at that conversation critically, not to derail the institution of marriage, but rather to appreciate what the institution of marriage actually stands for and should be standing for. Why do I say this? The institution of marriage, and mind you, I'm no counselor or expert, but I believe that the institution of marriage, by what I know so far, is something that shouldn't be dependent on someone's selfish thinking or someone's selfish needs. The institution of marriage is about selflessness and two people coming together to form one union to perceive and just conquer the world together in all aspects, to support each other, provide companionship and whatnot. It doesn't have to get to the point where one person is being so selfish and having everything done for him or her or per his or her dictates or wants and needs. At that point, it becomes something else other than marriage. And although there are troubles in marriages, I think that at the worst case, there's a way it's supposed to go. It shouldn't get to the point where it becomes so toxic and so dangerous that things like this begin to happen, where a hitman has now come in the person of Henry Arthur Tennant, a 62-year-old old man for that matter, who should know so much better, has allowed himself to be the hitman to take the life of a 33-year-old father from four of his children. Where did we go wrong? I don't get it. And it's also partly due to the issue where society seems to be more and more trying to put a monetary tag on everything. You can't put a monetary tag on human life. And I think Henry should be ashamed of himself. He has a family, and at his age, 62 years old, I'm sure he should have grandchildren in whichever form, whether from his daughter's side or his son's side. And he is supposed to be a model to these grandchildren. So if you go about your life taking the life of the father of another set of children, it's such a shame. So it was no surprise to me when he was arrested and the current wife of Jared, by name Kristen, actually called out to Henry and asked him to do the right thing by coming out to mention his accomplices. I think that in a way might also have influenced Henry's decision to take the plea deal and then help prosecute the other culprits in the presence of Mario and then Jared's ex-wife. Because who does that? And in as much as we all need money in one way or the other, or for one reason or the other, think that there are certain core principles and philosophies of life that your conscience shouldn't allow you to breach just for the purpose of getting money. If you agree with me, let me know in the comment section. If you don't, let me know in the comment section. These are just my views. But I think these are some of the things that went wrong and brought us to where we are with Jared Bridegan's murder. Also, on the background of this case, sorry, you would also find that Jared and Shanna, they met in 2009, they got married in 2010. Some people will say, oh, they didn't really get to know each other well. I'm on the fence on that one because even during dating, how well can you know somebody? Most often, they would put up the attitude they want you to see. You really get to know people when you are now married with them and you are waking up with them, sleeping with them at the end of the day, and you begin to see who they really are. And most of the time, it might not be what you had seen when you guys were dating. So for me, I think that I'll be on the fence on that point. Although sometimes, if you date longer, you might be lucky to see certain things, but it is not a given that you always see some things before you get married. And also, the age factor. You'd realize that Shanna Lee Gardner is older than Jared Bridegan by about 3 years. Depending on which part of the world you are watching this, that might not be an issue, but In other parts of the world, like Africa, it could be an issue where it turns out that a wife is older than her husband. It could influence certain things like respect in the home, especially respect having to come from the woman to the man, where she would feel that because she's older, he is more like a younger person to her or like her younger brother of a sort. I don't know. Let me know how age plays out in marriage at wherever you are watching this. I think this will be an interesting conversation, and I would want to learn more from the diverse cultures who watch my channel. But here in Africa, especially here, my country, specifically Ghana, it could become a problem actually. And most men wouldn't even want to marry a woman who is older than them. Some would say that is an ego problem, some would say it's a cultural thing. But, well, I think it's an equation of a lot of those things. But I digress. And if you look at their marriage, they got divorced in 2015, so just 5 years. But they had twins, a girl and a boy, who were 9 years at the time of Jared's death, and a very beautiful set of twins at that. You know, so no matter how that marriage ended, it's also important to know that they had these two angels come out of that marriage, and I think it's a beautiful thing. But fast forward, here are the questions that are begging. Shanna Lee's current husband, Mario, has actually been arrested. He was arrested earlier in March 2023, linked to the murder of Jared Bridegan. And then his current wife, Shanna Lee Gardner, who turns out to be Jared's ex-wife, was arrested just 3 days ago in August 2023 as the third person in connection to the murder of Jared Bridegan. But this is where it gets tricky because all this begs the question, why? I've been doing some research, but I'm yet to establish the reason why they decided to take the life of Jared. Is it about money? Is it about jealousy? Is it about something else? Or is it about other things too? I don't know. And I'm hoping that it will come out eventually when the case goes to trial for Mario Fernandez Saldana and his wife, Shanna Lee Gardner, former ex-wife or ex-wife of Jared Bridegan, and we would begin to understand the motive behind this murder if they are actually responsible for it at all. Because it's also possible that the triggerman, Henry Arthur Tenen, might be lying. I'm not saying he is. All I'm saying is, in law, it's always presumed that people are innocent until they're actually proven guilty. So I don't want to judge his ex-wife and her current husband before they are actually found guilty. So all these are possibilities in the mix. Now, there are some few lessons I think that we should take here. Sorry. And the first is that I think I've talked about it, the institution of marriage. It should be respected and it should be treated with principles, not with personal beliefs of for me I'm this or for me I'm that. I think that there are some core principles that should guide marriage, that should be the pillars of the marriage. And being truthful and trustworthy to each other is one of them. Being tolerant is one of them, and also several other things, communication and whatnot. I'm sure if you had to list, everybody will have different numbers of items on their list, but I'm sure we all agree that there are certain core things that run through. Now, on the basis of these core things, one of the things that I think we should consider, or couples in marriage should consider, is the fact that when couples get into a war in marriage, or even during divorce, or even after the divorce, the people who lose most are actually the children. And that is what is playing out here. Look at these four children of Jared Bridegan. He has a set of twins, a girl and a boy with his ex-wife, Shanna Lee Gardner, who is now a suspect in his death. And then he has two other kids with his current wife up until his death, Christine Bridegan. So he has four kids, two each with two separate women. Now, per the facts out there, it's being alleged or it's being reported that his ex-wife is suspected in his murder. So, from the perspective of these kids, it means that of the four kids, they are going to grow up with two of them, the twins, being able to find out later that their mom was either found guilty or at a point in time accused of taking the life of their dad. Imagine that. And then the other two sets of kids with his current wife are also going to grow up to find out that the mother of their half siblings, the twins, was found guilty or was once accused of being possibly guilty of taking the life of their dad. Now, imagine how that equation plays out in the medium to long term as they grow. The kid who was in the car with him when his life was taken, imagine the traumatic situation this kid will go through. And sometimes you can't even see it readily now because she's just 2 years old. But the question is, how did we get here? What was it so much so that a life has to be taken? Let's even put the divorce case aside. Why do we get to the point somebody needs to get killed and with no consideration for the fact that he is with his 2-year-old daughter in his car? Not to say it would have been any good if the kid wasn't around, but this is like the worst of two evils. How did we get here? What is in it for these people? The husband of Jared's ex-wife, Mario, what is in it for him? What is in it for his ex-wife, Shanna Lee Gardner? Obviously, I think for the trigger man, Henry Atatanen, what would be in it for him would have been the money if he was paid, and I'm sure he was paid. That will come out too. But my point is, there are other things more important in life than whatever motivated these people to get involved allegedly in the murder of Jared Bridegan. Now, the other thing we should also look at is it worth it in the end if you gain something on the back of having to take someone's life? I still don't get it. How some people can be able to sit, plan, and execute murders and go about the rest of their lives as if nothing had happened. And if you look at what Christine, the current wife of Jared, had said after he was murdered, she indicated that she felt so strongly that his ex-wife was behind it. Like I said earlier, at the time she said this, it would seem like these were the rants of the second wife who is just refusing to be cool with the first wife. So most people wouldn't really take her seriously because to a point it's actually expected of a second wife towards a first wife who is now an ex-wife to the current husband of the second wife. I hope I'm not confusing you, but it's to be expected though. But then I think that as society we should also learn to listen because sometimes you could have 100 people in a room with 99 of them thinking one thing and one person thinking another thing influenced by his or her sharp instincts. Don't let it be a matter of a majority vote where you say, oh, 99 people are thinking this, so they are right. Because sometimes the single person who is being directed by instincts could be the one who is on the right path. And in this case, it looks like Christine's instincts were on point. When she said this, most people didn't even bother to give it a second thought. But it turns out now that she may have been right because as of 3 days ago, the ex wife has now been arrested as the third person in this saga with regards to the murder of Microsoft software executive Jared Bridegan. And I think that Christine is doing everything that a loving wife would do for her dead husband because this is the time to fight for him. The marital vow says till death do us part, but in the manner in which he went, I think that she owes him that responsibility to fight for him to get justice and his kids or their kids to get justice due to the fact that somebody actually murdered him or a group of people conspired to murder him. I don't know if you agree with me. Let me know in the comment section. But I think that the law officials should also be given some credit, the law enforcement officials, because they've pursued this case in a very unrelenting manner, right from 2022 to date. They've been on this case and they are making the arrests. The current wife, Christine, actually said that the arrest of the ex-wife closes a very painful chapter, but then it opens up the next chapter where they are now going to go through a gruesome court trial issue. And I'm just hoping that justice will be found for Jared and his family. Now, I don't know how the home of his ex-wife currently is because don't forget she also has kids with the man she's now been accused of having conspired to get murdered with her current husband, who is the stepfather to the children, the twins of the man who has been murdered. This is a very dicey case and it has the potential of affecting a lineage or lineages and generations of these kids into the future in the medium to long term, depending especially on how the verdict plays out in this case. And I know that the justice system is going to also scrutinize this case objectively and fairly and thoroughly, such that no stone will be left unturned. I'm following the case as and when the verdicts come out for Mario Fernandez and his wife, Shanna Lee Gardner. I'll do well to bring them up to you as updates. Until then, subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet done so, turn on post notifications, and hey, please stay true to each other if you are dating or if you are married. Stay safe out there and keep an eye out. We'll catch you next time.